how the startup founder's journey is impacted by artificial intelligence. I have seen hundreds, if not thousands, of companies start and now work, struggle, and succeed with artificial intelligence. There's 4 things I'm going to talk about today. 1, you might be competing with your customers and not know it. 2, if you're looking for a quick exit because you've brought something to market, that day's gone. 3rd, your customer engagements are much more important than your technology. And then lastly, how believable of a roadmap you can tell people is really what's going to make the difference with your company and not. So look, I'm on probably, I think a dozen or so different boards of software companies. They're all using AI to ship code, and they're shipping code faster than ever before. I'm also seeing more pitch decks now from AI companies, companies that used AI to make software, whether it's for SaaS, for mobile apps, for on-prem. And I'm seeing some really interesting shifts that dramatically alter the journey of this tech founder. And we're going to go through these. So look, the first thing is that you have to realize almost every company that you could potentially be a customer to you, they write software. Every company produces software. And because of that, if they need a set of features to do cybersecurity, to do accounting, to do whatever is legal forensics, the day is coming, if it's not here already, where they can probably get what they want from Anthropic or any of the other AIs that are out there to do that. Which means that if you go back to my basic 5-slide pitch deck, what problem do you solve? How do you solve it? Show me some proof. What's your ask? What's your vision of success? That problem you're solving, if that's not a problem for your customers, that could be an issue, right? So you can't solve a problem if they've already solved it with their own internal development team. This really makes the founders I'm seeing a lot of people, they're starting cybersecurity companies where the customers have already solved these problems because it's just easier to code certain things. And in some cases for corporations, if it's homegrown, it's going to be really hard to compete with that, right? The people who are writing that software with AI are using budget that could be going to you. So you have to think about who is your market, who is your ideal customer profile, and is this really a defendable problem that you can solve? Now, maybe the how you solve it is completely different than what those customers are doing, but the reality is you've got to look both ways. When you're going in and talking to a customer, you really have to keep in mind that the problem you're solving, you might be describing a way for them to solve it. So you got to keep that in mind. And I've personally had this happen to me, right? I mean, people have used open source a lot, and I've had people, write their own open source versions equivalent to, maybe Tenable, maybe stuff in the Gula Tech Adventures portfolio. And I've seen companies, kind of get abused when they go in to pitch their wares. And, a lot of those ideas and features just show up, on-prem like that. Now, the second thing is more about the founder's journey. It used to be if I was giving guidance to a young Gula Tech Adventures portfolio company, or even just a founder that I made at an incubator or a startup, one of the things I would say would be, look, when you're starting your company, you don't need to start and try to, create CrowdStrike, create Tenable, create a public company, right? It's okay to sell a product, get a few customers, and then get acquired, especially if that's going to show you as an entrepreneur what it means to work like in a public company, a larger company, a company that's got international distribution, a company with a lot of capabilities. Kind of hard to learn that as a startup. But those days are gone. Those days are gone. If you've done something with software and you're selling it to a customer and you have a team of 3 people who've delivered that, how hard is it going to be for a known large company to develop the same thing? So it used to be that was hard, and the reason these small mergers and acquisitions happened was because these bigger companies didn't have the balance sheet. They couldn't afford to develop that software internally. But since the cost of software has gone down a lot, we're going to see that change. So that means the early exit for a founder who's gotten version 1 of their product and maybe 1 or 2 customers, Those days are gone. Those days are gone. But this also implies the third thing, which is your most important asset, is your customer. If you have a set of customers and they're using your technology, they're using your product, that is going to be some sort of metric that people could want to acquire your company for. But it's also going to be a measure of trust that you can deliver new capabilities to those customers. All across the Gula Tech Adventures portfolio, I've got different types of models. I've got tech-enabled services, I've got managed services, managed detection and response, SaaS services, and different things, all different models. Every one of those models is trust. The customer is saying that they trust the vendor, that they were going to give them some money and they're going to use some technology. Well, that trust you can then expand upon with other problems, other solutions that the customer could want. So almost across the entire portfolio, every one of our companies is planning something new to offer, whether it's with AI enablement or it was an AI enabled something to deliver. But the idea is that you can do more with those customers because of the trust that you have with them. And it used to be that if you were a startup, I really didn't, care so much, as long as the product worked, we could find the customer as long as it was a known problem. And that's really just more of a how do you go to market type of thing. But now it's much more about what else can we do for those customers. So, as a cyber background, I talk a lot about platformatization, where every cyber vendor, firewall vendors, identity, compliance, patching, they're all going to get into other things like detecting malware, detecting backdoors, doing threat analysis, because cyber is a very productized type of thing. It's almost like CRM, whether you use Salesforce or HubSpot, you kind of get the same thing. Cyber is kind of heading that way. But the point here is that everybody can kind of be their own Salesforce or their own HubSpot in cyber, as long as you've got the trust of those customers. And we'll see how many of these platforms kind of engage at that.
Hi there, Gula Tech VC bot here. Sorry to interrupt, but Ron wasn't doing a good job explaining platformatization. In short, we know how to secure a network, know your assets, protect them, check them for compromise, respond to the compromises, and then get back to work. Cyber platformatization is the concept that every cyber vendor will want to offer more and more of this. Now back to Ron.
So how you deal with your customers, whether it's through open source, through a community project, through renewals, that is going to be the metric of success. It's not having an idea. It's not having a version 1 of your product. It's not winning with speeds and feeds. It's how well are those customers paying for and using the product. And this gets into the fourth area. The fourth area now is, since software delivery is basically free, which it's not free, of course, but certainly it's dramatically cheaper than before. How do you manage a roadmap in a world where customers are already using a lot of different software and they might not just start using new features? Now, personally, when I was running Tenable Network Security, Tenable's known for vulnerability scanning, vulnerability management, configuration, compliance auditing, that sort of thing. I brought out some real-time capabilities. We brought out the log correlation engine, which is a SIM that did a lot of amazing things. We brought out the passive vulnerability scanner that basically listened to your network and could find vulnerabilities and compliance issues in real time. Both of those were really cool new technologies that we worked really hard on. Some customers really got it and liked it. But since the cast in stone vulnerability management was scan, patch, scan again, that sort of thing, it was some of these new things were outside of that. So my point is that, look, just because you can code something with AI, just because you have a great idea, just because you ship a new capability, it doesn't necessarily mean the customer is going to pay for it. And it certainly doesn't necessarily mean the customer is going to use it. One of the deep, dirty secrets about enterprise software is that most customers don't use 90% of the features of what they buy. I do it on my own. I mean, I run every product that we invest in, and you know what? I don't use every feature. when you do enterprise software or even complex software sales, you tend to have, a button that is like a yes or no for almost everybody out there, which leads to complexity. And because of that complexity, just because you happen to add new things doesn't mean that people are going to use it. So how do you approach that? You really need to have a roadmap that's going to appeal to a couple different constituents. So one, if you're trying to raise money for your company, do you have the ability to prove that you can ship a roadmap and deliver a roadmap that is going to be relevant in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years? I like to look for things in our companies like, what else can we do with this technology? This is an amazing database. This is a full packet capture system. This is a new way to analyze configurations of firewalls. Who else can you sell that to? Is there a down market? I hate up, down, whatever, but is there a market for small business, right? Is there a market, can I use this technology in large enterprise? Is there a way I can use this for red teaming? Is there a way I can use this for can I license the technology and do threat feeds? The point is there has to be more to selling your technology and what you're doing than just acquiring more customers. What more can we do with that? Second thing is, does that roadmap resonate with your customers? Everybody might want, look at BlackBerry. Everybody loved their BlackBerries until they didn't, right? So are you doing deep roadmap meetings and putting things on your roadmap that the customers have told you we're not going to solve with one, another vendor, or two, internal processes? If you have a roadmap that the customers are trusting you to build and deliver, that's really, really where you want to be on this journey. Now, it does present some problems. It used to be that if I stole your software, I stole your pitch decks, I get a lot of intellectual property. But we're really talking about committing to a roadmap for things you haven't built yet. And this is a really, really different thing that founders are going through right now. They're literally having conversations. We have people in our portfolio where they're having conversations with customers and they're literally committing to add things to the roadmap that they haven't done yet. And it might be something that they can ship really quicker because of Anthropic and ChatGPT and Gemini and that sort of stuff. So it does beg the question is like, what's going to differentiate a successful company in the future from one today? It used to be somebody who could code really well and treat their customers really well and have something in alignment. Well, I don't have to code really well. What I really need to do is just organize my roadmap. And this is really where it changes the dynamic for a lot of these startups and what you invest in and what you do. So just to reiterate, 5-slide pitch deck. You have to have a problem to solve. You have to have a way you're solving it. You have some proof that you can do all that. You have to know your ask, and you have to know what your vision of success looks like. AI changes all of that, right? We talked about how you might be competing with your customers because they have the ability to ship stuff like this. You might be able to, if your vision was to sell really quick, that day's kind of gone. The customer engagement is probably the biggest thing on that list. When I think about the 5-slide pitch deck, what problem you solve, how do you solve it? Show me some proof. I really want to see customer engagement. And that can be a lot of different things. But what I want to know, what features are those customers using? Who's using it? What verticals are they in? What's their budget life cycle, right? How easy would it be to replace something like that? That's the proof I really, really want to see. But then when we think about vision of success, I really want to see things that are roadmap orientated, that talk about the problems that customers are going to be able that they're going to have, that they're not going to be able to solve on their own with AI or with their other incumbent vendors. So if you think you have a pitch deck that's something that Gula Tech Adventures wants to look at that, we do cyber, we do AI, we do national security. You can answer those 5 questions and you can think you can go for a couple of years with some of our help. We'd love to hear from you. Contact us at investor@gula.tech. You can check out our portfolio at gula.tech/portfolio. And love to hear from you. Wish everybody to have a journey like this. If there's somebody out there who's on their startup journey for their first time, please have them watch this video. Send them to our startup founder video stuff. We got a whole bunch of things there for founders, org charts, raising money, pitching, that sort of stuff. This is a very fast-moving market, though, so I'd love to hear from you. If you've got challenges that you want to overcome, we can do a video on that. Please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching. I'm Ron Gula.